cut like across
We were talking,
cars,
maybe that should just be our normal
kids
if
to
you're
different
sick.
places.
Yeah, that's
maybe
good thing. Hopefully we've all learned.
Yeah, although
Somehow we've got to build an immunity stuff too, though. I just had to argue about
True,
fish
too.
sticks, so that's. You want fish sticks, but when the fish sticks are cooked, you no longer want fish sticks. So you're eating fish sticks.
Okay. Hey, Amy, Erica, do you want to do the purpose statement?
I would love to do the purpose.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the March 7th meeting of the Ames Community School District Board of Directors. I will call the meeting to order and entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Smith, seconded by Winfrey. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Let's see, how many of us are there? 1, 2, 3, 4. Passes 5-0. I had to count. Director Smith, will you read our purpose statement?
The Ames Community School District commits to equity and access that empowers every individual to reach their full personal and educational potential.
Thank you. And our first item on the agenda is the public hearing for the 2022-23 and 2023-24 school calendars. And I will go ahead and read our statement on public comments. Residents of the district, students attending the district, parents or guardians of students attending the district, and district staff members may address the board about any topic relevant to the district, whether on the current agenda or not. Those who wish to speak must sign up at the beginning of the meeting. Speaker participation is limited to 3 minutes once per item. The views and opinions of citizens addressing the board do not necessarily reflect those of the board, district administration, or staff. Speakers are to remember that Iowa law prohibits the board from discussing specific employees, students, or their performance. Student speakers will state their name and school. Others will state their name and address. And so if you would like to speak, I forgot to say this at the beginning, but if you'd like to speak as part of the public forum, which will happen later in the meeting, you can sign up on either side of the room here. And then same thing, if you'd like to speak on one of our discussion items, you can sign up for those as well. And if you're joining us online, you can use the link that you see there to sign up to speak online. So I'll go ahead and open our public hearing on the school calendar. Okay. Just going to give good wait time, and I'll check the Zoom. All right. Looks like we do not have any comments on the calendar, so I will go ahead and close our public hearing, and we'll move on to our discussion items, beginning with our board committee updates. So the first committee update is for the Audit and Budget Oversight Committee. This committee met on February 22nd. We reviewed the FY23 budget. Chris Denslin reviewed new funding. So the legislature has established a 2.5% supplemental state aid, which results in an increase in the district cost per student of $181. New revenue after the FY21 budget guarantee is $1.3 million. The district will receive less from open enrollment in and spend more on open enrollment out, which reduces available funding by about $450,000. Based on the level of new funding, recurring expenses added in fiscal year 22, and projected salary and benefit costs, the district will need to make budget reductions in the amount of approximately $1 million. We've maintained a tax rate of $14.34 for 9 years. That rate will likely be stable or might go down a little bit this year. We also reviewed the staffing model. So Dr. Vincent reviewed a research-based staffing model to determine if the district staffs positions according to research based on the number of students, special ed, and poverty levels. This model is being used to determine staffing efficiencies to aid in budget reductions. Dr. Vincent reviewed targeted areas at a very high level. So we'll meet again once the new money budget is completed. Do we have any questions or comments on Audit and Budget Committee? All right, we'll move on to Teaching and Learning Committee.
Good evening. The Teaching and Learning Committee met on March 1st. And the first thing we discussed was just a quick review of the ACSD mathematic planning for curriculum review. And so we had a little discussion on that. We also talked about a potential school start time changes proposal. They're in the process, the district's in the process of soliciting input and feedback on what that would mean. There are certainly some financial efficiencies with changing it. which would help with what President Shields Cook just discussed about the need for budget cuts. They are still in the process, like I said, of soliciting information input on what that might mean, and plan to do a survey out to parents later this year. The last thing we did is we continued to discuss a definition for curriculum for ACSD as a part of the updating the curriculum planning policy. And that was it.
All right, thank you. So the Facilities Committee did meet on March 2nd. The minutes are attached here, but the two members of the Facilities Committee who were present there are not present tonight, so they can give us any updates at the next meeting. And then we will move on to Policy Committee.
The Policy Committee met on March 2nd, and is that right? Yes, March 2nd. And we reviewed several policies, abuse of students by employees. We recommended updating based on ISB recommendation and some updated legal references. We discussed the policy on gifts to employees, which we all agreed the wording that was recommended by ISAB was a little confusing. So Director Johnson is going to work on that tricky one for us to make sure it's clear. Workers' compensation insurance was an update as well. Drug and alcohol testing that applies to employees that use a commercial driver's license. And employee conduct on appearance was a policy that we discussed and decided not to bring forward to the board, and rather to leave that for something that could be an employee handbook. And then some changes to staff hiring procedures and clarification of those procedures. And our next meeting is March 23rd.
Thank you. Okay, and I don't think we had anyone signed up under discussion items for board committee updates, but since we just have sort of shifted this practice to require the signups, if there's anyone who would like to speak on the board committee updates, you may come forward, or if you're on Zoom, you may raise your hand. Okay, and then we'll move on to our policies for discussion, which Director Winfrey just gave some updates on there. Do we have any other comments or questions on the policies for discussion? All right, and any comments from the public on the policies for discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the teaching and learning update. And we have materials adoption for Heritage Spanish. And we'll turn it over to Erin Miller.
Good evening. Thanks for having us this evening. I think you probably remember that we talked about and approved a Heritage Spanish course at the high school to start next year. And we're excited to be able to bring you tonight just a high-level overview of proposed material set to support that course. We have had a team of teachers at the high school reviewing various sets of materials. And this will be an interesting one for us because, as you may notice, these materials are all in Spanish. So we need to have some maybe different folks help us review these materials. So we're here tonight to just to kind of, like I said, give an overview about the process, what we liked about these materials, and then to just kind of showcase how you might give feedback if you're somebody that is interested and able to do that. So the teachers met a few times over the course of the year and looked at a variety of different materials and really narrowed down on this set of materials for some of the really kind of cool features they provide. Do you want to talk about the strengths, or do you want me to keep? Okay. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Annie Deem, one of the Spanish teachers at the high school who I've been involved in this process from its beginnings, which is many years back. Anyway, unfortunately. But at any rate, we are on the verge of having a class. And hopefully, Monica Martinez will be here shortly. She's a native speaker, and she will be teaching the class. But we looked at a variety of materials, and we were really pleased. We found several that we liked, but this collection called En Voz Alta, like speaking out loud in a strong voice, has the thing that appealed to me initially the most is that it has a lot of internal differentiation. It's a series of 3 texts, and within each, everything has at least, not at least, it has exactly 3 levels of differentiation. So although we're only going to propose buying the textbook for the intro level for this first year, we have electronic access to all 9 levels, those 3 texts, the 3 differentiated levels within each text. So we have all of that. So that's a really fabulous offering because, as you can imagine, we're going to have an enormous range of abilities in terms of literacy and comprehension and background of these various native speakers who will be taking this class. So the differentiation was probably the thing that jumped out at us the most, because everything's from scratch. So the more that's there, I mean, whatever we're doing is being put together. We're going to help Monica not teach it, but design the class itself. It's got a lot of built-in audio supports, so that's good. We have, well, there's an ebook basically, I mean the text, but we're going to have a classroom set because you can't always rely on the internet. And for us, sometimes we think that it's good for them to have a book in hand anyway. But in addition to the textbook, there are over 100 e-readers that go with this, novels that are leveled readers. So some of them are authentic texts, and some of them have, additional things have been created for native speakers, heritage learners. In addition to the e-readers, this particular series has an accompanying program that it's included, but it accompanies it, and they write articles on contemporary topics. So these will hopefully be engaging for the kids who are, we're trying to encourage to read more and more. Our focus is literacy here in this class. And did Monica? Yeah. Anyway, and so this has sort of like a little letter sort of accompanying it with various topics treated, and a huge variety of cultural topics. So it touches on the communities that all of our students, I think we're probably safe in saying that all the various communities that our students come from, their families' heritage, we should be able to find something of interest for all of them. So, Monica, you missed all that. So maybe you might, I don't know, you might want to talk.
Maybe we'll let you respond to questions. So we went through some of the big strengths of the program. The next portion of this, as you know, is getting feedback from the public. So we're interested in getting feedback, especially from any native Spanish speakers who might be listening. So we have a plan. So I don't know if Shaylee you want to talk about. I was really excited about your work to try to get some of our students who are native Spanish speakers to review the materials for us. And Eric, while she's doing that, do you want to pull up the website?
So later this week, I'll be over at the high school with a group of English learners who are Spanish speakers, reviewing it with them and offering them the opportunity to fill out the survey for feedback. We've also put a link in the Friday parent email that went out to Ames High parents, and it's on the website live, I think as of maybe today. Yep. Oh, there it is. Yes. So those are all ways that anyone in the community can give us feedback. The survey is open. We already have one response. Hopefully after tonight's meeting, we'll have a lot more.
Eric, do you want to pull up the website that says can you pull up the link to the actual curriculum review part of it? It's on the board agenda under like community review. Sorry, I don't know. Yep, that one, the top one there. Perfect, thank you. So when you go to the website, this is what you'll see. So there's a little bit of it that you'll be able to read and engage with in English, but most of the materials, so keep scrolling, Eric, so you can get a high-level overview. But if you keep scrolling there, the review instructional materials, you can actually click on those two books that you, yep, right there. The student and the teacher, student edition of the book and the workbook, and it will take you into some of those pieces that she was just describing that have some of the current event things and the readers. And so if you want to just look through it even to get a sense, there is a Google form that's open. It's going to be open until March 20th. And then we'll take that feedback and be back here on the 21st to share our final recommendation. But you'll see the purchase price on there includes the textbooks, the hard copies, as well as some digital licenses for multiple years, so that we'll have access to these things going forward. So at this point, if you have questions, we would be happy to answer them.
Yo quería primero agradecer por su trabajo, creo que es sumamente importante y me alegro mucho de que estén trabajando en esto. So, yeah, thanks a lot. This is really important work. I'm really glad you're working on it. Will we be, so it looks like there are multiple levels of books here. Will we just be getting the first level of the book then? Is that the idea?
Yeah, the hard copy will be the first year. And then if we were to add another level of Heritage Spanish, then we may come back and recommend purchasing additional hard copies.
Okay.
But the teachers and students will have access to multiple levels online. So if a student needed some differentiation beyond even the first level of the hard copy, we would have it available online.
Okay, great. Did you look at multiple sets of materials or was, yeah.
Yes, so we started with 3 and then narrated down to this one. Our second choice that we were gonna bring and present, but then we didn't, was because it lacked a lot of stuff. It had a workbook and the pictures in the book were nicer, but this one came with, you know, all the eye culture that I think Annie was talking about. And the news articles that, you know, we will be able to have for students from like different places, because these students are going to be from everywhere, not just for one place. So we really like that. So we kind of just said, okay, I think this is it.
That's great.
And we had originally, I mean, we had contacted various publishers and found some really beautiful books, but they were not really useful to us. They were more perhaps university level or, you know, and some, I mean, just fabulous things that are available now. But this really has everything we think we need. So.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited to see this get started. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Any comments for from the public on the teaching and learning update? All right. We will move on to the governor's teacher retention pay, and I'll turn it over to Chris Stensland.
Good evening, board. Eric, if you could pull up the presentation. So we're going to talk a little bit about what has, I think, been one of the hottest topics in Iowa education the last couple of weeks, and that is Governor Reynolds' teacher retention bonus. In her condition of the state in January, Governor Reynolds announced that full-time classroom teachers in Iowa would receive $8,000 retention bonus for any grades pre-K kindergarten through 12th grade who stayed on the job through the pandemic. So after that announcement was made, we were just kind of waiting for all the details. The Department of Education released those details a couple weeks ago. And they are going to be using the state portion of ESSER funds to fund this. So it'll be another funding source that we'll be getting. They'll be funding the $1,000 plus the $76.50 for the employer's share of FICA. Bonuses are not subject to IPERS, so there'll be no IPERS for either the employee or the employer. To qualify for this retention bonus, staff must hold a valid practitioner's license under Iowa Chapter 272. It has to be a standard teaching license, not just a substitute license. They have to be full-time, which they defined as 1.0 for their teaching contract only, and had to be an in-person classroom teacher. They have to complete the remainder of this school year's teaching assignment. They had to have been hired full-time in-person as a full-time in-person classroom teacher prior on or before October 1st. And they have to work for one of the recognized education agencies in the state, which includes school districts. And then they could not be on administrative leave for disciplinary reasons. So after sifting through the guidance and several different sessions with the Department of Education, it was determined that the following staff are eligible for this bonus under the special ESSER funds: pre-K through 6 or 5, grade 5 level teachers, content area teachers, math, science, English, etc. Those teachers that provide direct interventions to students 100% of their time, that would include title, EL, special education teachers, and then our specials, the PE, music, and art. Those staff that were determined to be ineligible would be any teacher less than 1.0, even if we considered them to be full-time, any teacher that we hired after October 1st, any teacher who is released from the classroom for a part or all of their day, any teacher who does not provide direct interventions to students 100% of their time if they're not a classroom teacher, any teacher who taught exclusively online. This doesn't affect the Ames School District, but there are 23 online programs across the state, so there are quite a few teachers in other school districts that are being excluded because they teach in those online programs. School counselors, librarians, nurses, any of those released positions funded by the Teacher Leader Compensation Grant, behavior interventionists, homeschool teachers, and then any long-term subs that we had that didn't have that standard teaching license. So next steps, some of these have already have happened. We are required to send out a teacher supplemental agreement. We did that through our Frontline Central program last week. There were 703 of those agreements that went out, and by the next morning we had 228 of them. I'm sorry, 307 went out. I transposed that. We sent out 307 and we had 228 of them by the next morning. So, and I think I looked today where we've got all of them in but 58. So the eligible staff has to accept the payment in writing. They have to say that they're willing to take the money. We have to keep that documentation for 5 years. They also have to acknowledge that if they would leave their teaching assignment before the end of this school year, that we are required by the state to take that money out of their last check and return it to the state. So once we have those supplemental agreements back, Dr. Vinson will have to go in and make assurances on how we are going to use the money that's in compliance with all these steps that I've gone through. We have to say how many of those agreements we have back. There's another step. They can pull from a different ESSER funding source if teachers have taught in a summer school or after school program since March of 2020. And so we have to ask that question as well. And then we are required to process this payroll on or before April 5th. So they first announced this the last week of February and told us that we had to have this all done and processed, the payroll processed by April 5th. There was just no way that we could do that, get all these steps done and get everything ready for the March 18th regular teacher payroll, especially with spring break in there. And so we will be paying this payment on the classified payroll on March 31st. I'd be happy to answer any questions. We do, since As you can imagine, because of the number of staff that this plan excluded, there has been quite a bit of consternation within the state, not only from the educators who are being excluded, but from the business managers who are trying to navigate all this and the HR directors. There originally was guidance that we could not use our own ESSER funds to backfill this. We did receive information last Thursday, I believe, that this Department of Ed has revised that and has given us guidance that allows us to backfill not only for the excluded staff, but for any other staff that we might. So we want to make a payment to. So we have an action item on and later in the agenda for that. I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Can you talk with us about the action item for the action item that you were suggesting that we approve to backfill the payment for everybody who's excluded? Will there be anybody excluded at the end of this?
No.
Okay. Everybody who's full-time.
That fulfill their work assignment or contract through the end of the year.
Okay. So including people, say, hired after October 1st will be included in this payment?
On the teaching staff,
yes.
Teaching staff. The EA and custodial bonus had some staggered start times.
Okay.
The retention bonus went down in amount based on when they were hired, so we would stay with that previous board action.
Okay.
We really haven't had a lot of staff other than EAs and custodians and teachers that were hired after October 1st, so that's not as much a consideration in the other employee groups.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. Any comments from the public on the governor's teacher retention pay? Okay. I will go ahead and we'll move on to our public forum. I did read the statement on public comments earlier, so I will just remind any speakers to please state your name and address. And we have Monique Benkin.
Monique Benkin. Is this on?
I don't think it is.
It says it's on. Oh, well,
Yep, yeah, it
now I broke it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Monique Benkin, 4810 Dover Drive. I'm speaking on behalf of ASAT, a nonpartisan group of concerned citizens whose intention is to shine light on racial and ethnic disparities that exist throughout the Ames Community School District. I watched the public comment section from the last school board meeting with horror as Black student after Black student shared their experiences with discrimination in this district. They spoke about unequal discipline, over-policing by staff, feeling judged, suspect, demeaned, and uncared for. They talked about the noticeable differences in discipline they received compared to their white peers. They asked for high school administrators to report disciplinary data to the board and for all teachers to receive restorative justice training. They asked for an apology from the district staff who mistreated them and for a mediator to be placed at the high school. ASAT wants those students to know that we heard you. I watched that public comment with horror for a few other reasons, though. First, those students were part of my daughter's friend group at the middle school. I sat her down and to watch her friends beg this board to be treated like human beings and not like dogs so that she could understand the fate she avoided by deciding to leave this district. Second, I'm horrified that this district continues to subject our Black students to outright racism and discrimination. What they were saying is what your data has been telling you for years. I'm frustrated because nothing has changed, and you know what it means for their futures. Third, I was horrified because a teacher told one of our precious Black children to go to the office or get out. Get out? Really? Where is this 15-year-old child supposed to go? The complete and total lack of compassion for these Black children is beyond disgusting. And finally, I was horrified because of you. I waited for someone to express some humanity after these beautiful Black children came to you with their suffering. Nothing. I waited to see if any of you would use your opportunity to speak freely during the items from the board section. None of you did. The only comment was about the public school celebration week. It doesn't seem like our Black students have much to celebrate. Your silence was disappointing. What did you do in the 2 weeks since those students brought their concerns to you? Please tell us in the upcoming items from the board section. And if you haven't done anything, what can you do now? First, you can do what your students are asking for. Bring disciplinary data for all schools in the district to board meetings and provide teachers with restorative justice training. Second, the members of ASAT request that you hold a work session to address the state of Black students in the district. Continuing to ignore the discrimination going on in our schools is simply unacceptable. And finally, to the parents of the students who spoke last week, please file a complaint with the Iowa Civil Rights Commission. You do not have to tolerate having your students be racially profiled and discriminated against in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bankin. We do not have anyone else signed in to speak as part of the public forum. So I will close our public forum and move on to our consent items, and I'll entertain a motion.
I move the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved by Winfrey, seconded by Lankaitis. Dr. Vincent, gifts to the district.
Yes, we're very pleased to recognize a gift to the Ames Middle School Orchestra. An instrument has been donated from Lindy Adams.
Thank you. It was moved by Winfrey, seconded by Lankaitis to accept the consent items as presented. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes 5-0. We'll move on to our action items and begin with the ESSER employee retention pay. And I'll entertain a motion.
Due to systemic staff shortages in the state, staff vacancies in our district, and to reinforce our desire to retain our employees, I move the board approve the retention pay plan for the employee plan as presented.
Second.
Moved by Lankaitis, seconded by Becker. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes 5-0. Go bond prepayment.
I move the resolution of authorizing the redemption of general obligation school bonds, Series 2019, dated June 5th, 2019, approving a second amendment to escrow agent agreement and levying a tax for fiscal year 2023 for the redemption of general obligation school bonds, Series 2019, dated June 5th, 2019.
Second.
Moved by Lankaitis, seconded by Smith. Chris Senslin, you want to give us a little update on this one?
Yes, Eric, if you could pull up the second attachment. Yep, that one, thank you. I just want to take a minute. We continue to enjoy a very healthy tax base in the Ames School District. And so we have been, we have started out with the $55 million of bonds for the elementaries in the 2012 2014 era. We have been able, because of our tax base, to prepay on those bonds periodically. And so this year, we had a fairly good valuation growth again. So we are able to take our debt service levy up to $4.05 and still keep that tax rate steady, if not coming down a little bit. So we'll be levying $5.7 million on the 2019 bonds that we issued for the high school. And Eric, if you'll scroll down to the second section, I want to show you that by pre-levying on those bonds and putting them in escrow so that they can, we can call the bonds when they become callable, we will save just under $1.5 million of interest. And I really wanted to highlight, since we've been doing the pre-levying on all the bonds since 2015, we have saved almost $9.5 million of interest. So just wanted to highlight that.
Any questions for Chris? All right, it was moved by Lankaitis, seconded by Smith, and we'll do a roll call vote.
Director Lankitis,
Aye.
Director Becker,
Aye.
Director Shields Cook. Aye. Director Winfrey,
Aye.
Director Smith.
Aye.
Passes 5-0. The 2022-23 and 2023-24 school calendars.
I move the board approve the 2022-23 and 2023-24 school calendars as presented.
Second.
Moved by Winfrey, seconded by Smith. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 5-0. Our policies for action.
I move the board approve the policies as presented.
Second.
Moved by Winfrey, seconded by Lankitis.
Are there-
Discussion?
Are there any there?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
They're fine.
Yeah, these are the ones we talked about last week.
I was like, where are they?
Yeah.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 5-0. We will move on to our board and staff items. We'll start with items from the board. We do not have any requests for staff this evening. Other items from the board.
I just want to thank the teachers and community members who stepped up to advocate for the ESSER funds to be used for the nearly 100 certified employees that hadn't been included originally. To stand up for justice takes courage and takes the ability to risk, and I appreciate the context that we receive from those folks to encourage us to be inclusive of those funds being distributed.
Thank you.
I want to respond to two things. I want to respond, first of all, to Dr. Binkin, to Dr. Binkin's comments. What I can say is that I don't understand what all the issues are, but I will work on understanding what's going on. I can't speak for exactly what's happening, but it is my understanding that we will be reviewing disciplinary data in the future. I also want to talk about recent legislation with respect to trans athletes, banning of trans athlete women or girls from sports. Again, I am at this point not sure how this is going to impact our district, but I would like to understand how this will impact our district. And I would encourage people to reach out to us if they have information about how this is going to impact our district.
Thank you. Other items from the board? Items from the superintendent?
I have just a few. One would be just an update to remind individuals that may be interested that while we no longer do the COVID update at the board table, the dashboard remains linked on our website. A few statements about just our current state. We are fortunate to now be at a low community level for spread and for COVID. We have no staff positive and 3 student positives at this point. And we are continuing to see that decrease in our school system that mirrors the overall decline in the community. So that's a piece of good news. On a serious note, would just like to extend our thoughts to the Des Moines Public School this afternoon, especially the students, families, and staff at East High School, and remind our community that we do have resources linked on our website regarding school safety, including how they can make use of an anonymous alert system, should that be helpful. We all know that encouraging each other and being supportive of each other and speaking up when we have information is one of the best preventative strategies that we have across a large array of concerns that affect our students in our schools. And then finally, just a very quick comment that we were able to have a robust conversation in our directors meeting this morning on what might it look like to have a notion of a district data wall, whether that's a real wall or whether that's electronic means, and have plans in the next several weeks to
be able to dig into the data ourselves and try to think about what information is good for what audience to answer what question, how does that link with our district priorities? How would we use that and make that connection between the broad goals we have and the progress we hopefully are making, or if not, how that feeds into our ongoing system of adjustments and new hypotheses. And just a reminder that there's very serious work underway with our equity plan that addresses some of the very specific issues that have been raised in many of our board meetings. So an encouragement that anyone that would want to be involved with those to, again, there's links on the website, or they certainly could link with any of us to get information about how to be involved in working towards high outcomes that are satisfactory to all of us towards those priorities that we have established. I don't have any additional items.
All right, thank you. We will move on to the board planning calendar. We will see everyone again after spring break. On March 21st, we'll have a regular meeting. And then we have a work session scheduled on March 31st, where IASB will be joining us. I'm really looking forward to that one. Got the opportunity to meet Tammy Draba, who is the new IASB board specialist. And she's the one that'll be presenting at our meeting. So should be a good one. Any comments or questions on the board planning calendar? And Director Beerbaum's not here, so I will entertain a motion from someone else to adjourn. Second, or moved by Winfrey. Second. Thank you. I can't second. Moved by Winfrey, seconded by Limkitis. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes 5-0.